Graham Murray says it was the best he's seen the Mariners play. The opening 20 minutes shell-shocked the Warriors and the 20,000-strong home crowd before the visitors let their 10-6 lead slide away in the dying stages of the first half.
We've probably got to learn to concentrate a bit harder in that area, and we'll ram it home to them. It's 2 weeks in a row we've let something in, let it slip just on half-time.
Hunter lost 18-14. Apart from missing the 2 points, there are no other major concerns. Troy Stone has a niggling knee injury. Gavin Thompson a minor hand complaint. Both should be fit for the Mariners' trip to Adelaide.
They're playing relatively good football at times. Just that little bit of concentration there at times that letting us down, but I'll tell you, we're very close to a win.
It was a win for the Newcastle Knights, 11-6 over last year's grand finalist St George. The Knights had control for almost the entire game, although Malcolm really admits they let the Dragons in with a chance midway through the second term. Saints landed 2 quick penalties to make it a 4-point ball game, but from then they failed to cross the line.
The fact that they went for penalty goals instead of kicking for touch and putting further pressure on is testament that the defence was working.
Paul Harrigan's first half knock and subsequent shoulder complaint is believed to be associated with migraines. Chief has been suffering intense headaches since the pre-season trip to Coffs Harbour. Today he saw a specialist.
He had some scans last week, there's no problem there, but we need to get to the bottom of why he's coming with these severe migraine problems.
Jonathan Upton, NBN News.
$11 US F-15 Eagles and 10 Australian FA-18 Hornets touched down at Williamtown late yesterday, 2 hours flying time and several thousand kilometres out of harm's way. The two forces were to have been doing battle in the skies over North Queensland today at the start of Operation Tandem Thrust. Instead, the jets sat motionless, staring each other down across the flight line.
We've trained for this basically from the start of the year, and we were looking for the opportunity to do as much as we could while we had the assets in place for tandem thrust. We're not going to get that opportunity now. We'll try and catch up as best we can.
It's a major disappointment for the Americans, who travelled from Okinawa in Japan after 6 months of planning.
This was our best, largest training exercise of the year, our best opportunity to polish up our skills.
The two forces will try to make the most of a bad situation, planning a number of sorties in the skies over the Hunter Valley. Whether they rejoin the land and sea forces involved in Operation Tandem Thrust will depend on the movements of Cyclone Justin.
Probably by next Monday or Tuesday, if we're not back in the exercise by then, it will probably be a write-off.
The first of the Hunter Valley exercises is scheduled for Thursday. Phil Hind, NBN News.
Mike Alston was the under-manager at the Gretley mine in the months leading up to the drowning of 4 men after they drilled into an old water-filled shaft. Under cross-examination, Mr Alston admitted he hadn't undertaken any research into the old workings before sending his men down. Counsel assisting David Kirby QC asked whether he had questioned the accuracy of the maps that dated back to early this century. Mr Alston replied, "We had to work off something." He also hadn't seen the mine's application to the Department of Mineral Resources. It committed management to test drilling into the 50-metre safety barrier between the face of the seam and where the old workings were thought to be. Mr Kirby QC said, "Draining the mine would remove the risk of an inrush, wouldn't it?" Mr Alston replied, "So would a 50-metre barrier." Test drilling was eventually approved days before the tragedy, but it was never started. Mr Alston also said a build-up of water in the mine could have been linked to the old workings, but at no stage did he report that possibility, despite a statutory obligation to do so. Mr Kirby's last question was whether the production manager would have done anything differently. Mr Alston said, "Knowing what we did at the time, I don't believe we would have done anything differently." The inquiry will continue until Thursday, before resuming in Newcastle next Monday. Richard O'Leary, NBN News.
Deaf and hearing impaired children are just like any others. They just need a little more attention and learn things by a slightly different method. The education of such children has an important bearing on their future role and happiness in mainstream society. St Dominic's Centre for Hearing Impaired Children today hosted a visit by a delegation of hearing educators from the United States, allowing them to swap information and ideas.
It's a chance for those travelling from America to learn what we're doing here, and an opportunity for us to learn about what techniques, what methods, what progress is being made in the States as well.
The group aims to encourage the greater acceptance of the hearing impaired in society, also looking at the new technology available.
Cochlear implants would be one issue, in that it's new technology, how it's affecting children, what progress they're making post a cochlear implant.
The American delegation is in Australia for 2 weeks. Emma Ossian, NBN News.
Built in 1962, the Westcott Presbyterian Home for the Aged no longer meets regulation standards. To bring itself up to date and provide more sophisticated services, Westcott is planning an $8 million redevelopment.
Life will be better in that the units themselves will be much larger than they are presently accommodated in. The services will all be able to be provided to the residents in their unit, but better still, it will be a place that they can feel proud to call home.
Stage 1 will see a new wing built, providing residents with their own rooms and en-suites in a more homely environment. To get the first stage off the ground, Westcott is appealing to the public and local businesses to donate funds.
We believe we need a further $1 million to make sure we will do it without jeopardising the financial viability of Westcott.
Simone Cobb, NBN News.
Paul Harrigan was missing from this afternoon's media conference. He also won't make an appearance this weekend. The Knights captain left the field midway through the first half on Sunday after a heavy knock triggered another migraine. He's been busy seeing specialists, and today his doctor told him not to take the field until further notice.
He was just advised that because of the circumstances and the continued migraine bouts, that he should have at least a week off and then decide further down the track.
With Harrigan out, Wayne Richards makes the move into the front row for the battle with the Bears, while Billy Peaton comes into the starting lineup from the bench.
We're expecting obviously a very torrid game against North Sydney, and there'll have to be a lot of football played to knock a team of that calibre off.
Meantime, Andrew John's recovery is progressing to plan. Doctors say he should make a return to the paddock in 5 weeks. The NBN Telethon has been given a 5-figure boost. Just under $13,000 was raised from the Knights Roosters pre-season game last month, and Marathon Stadium is Marathon Stadium at least for the next 2 years. Naming rights sponsorships have been signed until 1998.
"28-year-old Marie Cubbin and her mother 57-year-old Dorothy, both from Newcastle, were killed when their car aquaplaned across the Pacific Highway into the path of another vehicle during a heavy downpour. Darren Cubbin and his brother Ken lost 2 family members in the accident, their sadness turning to anger. Today, Darren began spray painting a warning to other motorists on the dangers of the road before being arrested by police. The section of road was built to replace the notorious Swansea Bends, but the grieving brothers say it's still dangerous.
All they've done is made it a bigger Swansea Bends. They haven't solved the problem. There's still lives being lost on the road, and they're doing nothing about it. There's got to be something done about it. The road's got to be fixed now and at any cost.
They feel we're just going to lay down and just let it be swept under the mat, and nothing's going to be done. They've got a rude shot coming to them.
The RTA has erected a slippery when wet sign by the roadside. However, the brothers believe the road needs better drainage and a concrete barrier.
It should be done straight away. They should be addressing the problem straight away. They know it's there. They're just turning their back to it. They're just shutting it out.
The Cubbon brothers have vowed to fight on until the safety measures are implemented. Blake Doyle, NBN News.
Workers on the factory floor received their retrenchment notices on Tuesday. Today the receivers turned their attentions to clerical staff and management, among them Peter and Lindsay Rundle. The departure of the two brothers will mark the end of a 90-year-old family association with the business.
We'll be here from week to week as required, but possibly at a maximum of 5 weeks, a minimum of till Monday.
Despite the blow, Peter Rundle remains buoyed by the overwhelming public response to his company's plight. National media and press exposure has brought a flood of good wishes and offers of 11th hour financial backing.
We've had offers of some refinancing, subject to people having a look at us, so it's been a positive result. We have several of those.
It's most likely, though, that Rundles will try to buy elements of their business back once Westpac has wound it up. The unions now hold little hope the business in its present form can be saved. While they're confident workers' superannuation and weekly wages are safe, a question mark now hangs over their termination payouts, holiday pay and long service leave.
But the problem is when you get into these fire sale situations, things are sold off cheaply. And if that's the case, our members could lose out because of it.
The union has advised Rundle's staff to work out their notice and fill outstanding orders to ensure the company gets paid and that workers receive what they're owed. Phil Hind, NBN News. The former Cooks Hill Public School suffered extensive damage in the 1989 earthquake. Since then, the ground floor has been used intermittently by TAFE and more recently by the WEA. The WEA has now purchased the building from the state government at a cost of more than $400,000. Restoring the building to its former glory will cost many thousands more.
We think another $250,000 to refurbish it totally, including the grounds and resetting the car park. But that's not money that we need to spend right away.
The WEA company made the decision to buy the building after it outgrew its old premises. The first priority will be the upgrading of the ground floor classrooms to cope with the growing number of people in the Hunter seeking adult education. The company expects it won't be long before the second floor classrooms are needed, with adult education the fastest growing market in the educational sector.
I think adults are becoming more aware that they need to use their time constructively, and they can do that for leisure, pleasure purposes, and also for training. That either you need skills to get a job, but you also need to maintain those skills and upgrade those skills to stay in work.
The full refurbishment of the building isn't expected to be completed until late next year. Phil Hind, NBN News.
The Sydney Flames will clash next weekend with the AIS, the Canberra Capitals and the Brisbane Blazers in the Mingara Invitational Tournament. It's a great chance to showcase the best in the sport to the Opals of the future.
It is all about promoting the sport at a junior level. With numbers, you get quality. So if we can promote high quality games, the kids get to see, meet and to know what they have to do to reach that level.
The tournament will be a real test for the 7 Olympians competing after the highs of Atlanta.
It's always in the back of your mind. It's a great memory, and we're just going to concentrate on this year. We've got a few changes which hopefully are going to help because we haven't done that well in the last few years, so a change may do the job.
For Michelle Griffiths, it's a whole new ball game. For the last 3 years, she has helped Adelaide win the title, beating the Sydney Flames on each occasion. Now she has joined the old enemy for 1997.
Let's hope this time I can turn it around for the Flames and I can win another championship for me, but also for the Flames. Maybe it's the link they've been missing.
And for long-serving WNBL player Rhonda Bates, Adelaide will still be the one to beat.
They always are, and with Michelle I think we're going to try to rub it in their faces a bit this year, but of course Boleen is also going to be pretty tough this year, and I think everyone's had a few changes here and there between coaches and players, and I just can't wait to get started.
A final warm-up session for the Speedway sidecars. Newcastle duos Darren Caife and Dean Hughes and brothers Gavin and Dean Edwards dusted up a storm this afternoon at the showground. While their event will be the feature of Saturday's Track Masters, it's one of a number of classes on the big bike program. Other races will involve motocross, dirt track, post classic and Harleys. Preliminary heats start from 4, main racing at 7 o'clock. Meantime, the 700 horsepower sprint cars make their final appearance of the season at the Newcastle International Motordrome tomorrow night. 22 cars have entered for the feature, while other events include modifieds, street stock sedans and stock cars. Jonathan Upton, NBN News. Curry at Curry is never an easy assignment in the NRL, but South Newcastle looks set to score the first points of the match when the Lions made a break early in the first half. The scare must have woken the Bulldogs. Consecutive sets of 6 at the other end of the park, and Curry took advantage of the Lions' sloppy marker defence. 6-0 a couple of minutes later, the Bulldogs proved they could run the ball as well. Plenty of pace and good hands giving the local crowd something to cheer about, and Curry a 12-0 lead. Souths fought back to finish the match 6 points in arrears. It's Curry's second win on the trot. Meantime, this afternoon at St John Oval at Charlestown, the Butcher Boys had plans of carving up Toronto, and the new look side did just that to race to a 6-0 lead. In perhaps a hint of better things to come this season, it was all going well for Central, but the Scorpions put some sting into their attack to level the match at 6 points apiece. Toronto applied more pressure shortly before the break, and this time the points came under the black dot. The Scorpions went on to win, but the Butcher Boys were far from disgraced.
At that stage of the game, it's too early, and against a class outfit like North Sydney, it's you can never rest on your laurels, particularly that early. And I was a little concerned that maybe mentally we might have just lost that edge. And
The prisoners escaped shortly after yesterday's 12 o'clock roll call. Jeffrey Sutherland, aged 23, made his getaway with 19-year-old David Bell and 21-year-old Brett Johnson, jumping over a 2-metre fence on the western side of the jail. Using a pair of tin snips, the inmates cut a hole in 2 mesh fences, making their way towards the football oval.
They've walked to the very back of the prison on that sports oval where there is another fence, cut a 3rd hole in that fence, and then gone out and escaped into bushland.
Police believe the men headed to Cessnock, where a blue Toyota sedan went missing from the Coles supermarket car park. The vehicle was found early this morning in King's Cross in Sydney. Just an hour after the 3 prisoners escaped, 2 other inmates noticed the hole in the fence. Making their getaway, they scrambled through bushland to Oakey Creek Road, but were captured 15 minutes later. Meanwhile, police are still searching for the first escapees. Sutherland is serving a 2-year sentence for serious assault, while Johnson and Bell had been convicted of break and enter. Police are warning the public to avoid contact with the men.
Would advise any members of the public upon seeing these persons not to approach them directly, just simply to contact their local police station.
Police are concentrating their search in the King's Cross area. Vanessa Spark, NBN News.
A victim of the 89 earthquake, the 70-year-old premises in Hunter Street was targeted by council 5 years ago under its building safety program. Property owners were ordered to repair around 1,000 inner-city buildings and meet a number of safety standards. While some have complied, Ladru Proprietary Limited is one of dozens that have failed to carry out the work. Council fought the matter in the Land and Environment Court. The company was fined $5,000 and ordered to pay council's court costs of nearly $7,000.
We'd like to do it in a constructive way and give the signal that we're serious about doing the measures to upgrade the buildings.
Council is also tightening its reins on the future of the city's brothels and sex shops. It's considering new guidelines that would limit their number, scale and location.
We're trying to send the message that it's not open slather.
And an announcement today on the future of Newcastle's historic Convict Lumberyard site in Scott Street. Heritage Council Chair Hazel Hawke will visit the city next month for a groundbreaking ceremony, marking the start of work on a display park.
terrific sense of humour, and I don't know, we're just all jolly people.
For the workers at the embattled clothing company, it's been an emotional roller coaster. But today, a glimmer of hope. Westpac and the receiver putting together a deal to keep the business going and save 250 jobs.
This afternoon I had a meeting with the staff of Rundles, whereby I advised them of the developments that have occurred, and I put to them that the receiver is prepared to withdraw the notices of termination.
Providing workers stay with the company, their holiday pay, long service leave and sick leave will be protected. Their union is urging staff to accept the deal.
We've got our jobs. That's all we really wanted from the outset.
The change of heart comes after an offer by two outside businesses to buy the troubled manufacturer. The receiver is tight-lipped about who the interested parties are, but have confirmed the state government is one of the potential investors. Even though the receivers plan to include Peter and Lindsay Rundle in their restructuring discussions, a continuing role for the brothers remains unclear.
It's sad for the family, of course, but we've done the best we can, particularly for the staff.
Staff have been urged to respond to the offer within the next few days. In the meantime, receivers will continue their discussions with outside buyers in a bid to save the 90-year-old business. Vanessa Spark, NBN News.
The Newcastle Breakers met Collingwood knowing they had to win to keep alive their slim hopes of a berth in the finals, but despite shot after shot from both teams, no one could smash the deadlock. The match finished 0-0, enough for coach Cosmina to play the optimist. Australia had to win the third test at Newcastle's International Hockey Centre to wrap up the series, and after 6 minutes the breakthrough came when left winger Kelly Free netted after a scramble in front of goal. Australia could have gone further ahead, but the shots didn't find the mark. A first-half onslaught from the Hockeyroos had the tourists on the back foot, the Atlanta gold medalists pounding the Germans' defensive line. But after finding the early lead, the Aussies found it tough netting the second. Germany held on, although they too struggled in attack. The match finished 1-0, Australia scoring an unbeatable 2-0 lead in the series, but the team admits there is still room for improvement in tomorrow's final test.
The German girls are certainly quite aggressive and they protect the ball really well, so we have to get in there and be a little bit more aggressive, I think. I think we're a little bit tentative at times.
A good win for Australia and maybe a good win for Newcastle. The city is trying to lure international teams to the region in the lead up to Sydney 2000, and local organisers have received positive reports from the match.
Australian women's hockey have praised us no end. The players themselves have praised us.
Jonathan Upton, NBN News.
The hepatitis outbreak at Wallace Lake has had a devastating effect on the local oyster growers. It has also seen Great Lakes Council thrust firmly into the hot seat. Environment Minister Pam Allen, the first to blame the council, claiming it had failed to clean up 2 nearby sanitary ponds.
This certainly points to gross negligence by the Great Lakes Shire Council in its operations of its sewage and septic systems.
But today, this startling admission.
At the time that we made our statement about gross negligence on the part of the Great Lakes Shire Council, it was the strong belief of the EPA at that stage that the various depot, the sanitary depot, was the chief source. That was found not to be the case.
Pam Allen has refused to offer a formal apology to the council, saying she had simply been wrongly advised by the EPA.
Well, it's not necessarily the case that they therefore deserve an apology when in fact a minister acts according to the advice of their department.
The Great Lakes Council, which is now facing a multi-million-dollar lawsuit brought by some of the more than 300 hepatitis A sufferers, has welcomed the about-face.
These issues have tremendous repercussions in our community, and we really need to keep going forward, not backwards. So I'm very grateful at least that the Minister has vindicated us.
Just what caused the outbreak now remains unclear, and it's something Great Lakes Council fears may never be known.
I think the cause is in as much doubt today as it was from day one. And I think the sad thing is going to be about this, that no matter what, all the testing that we're doing and the money we've spent, at the end of the day, we're still not going to be able to find what the problem was.
Pam Allen's office, meanwhile, this afternoon released another EPA report which suggests local pleasure boats and poor toilet facilities within the oyster industry itself could be to blame. The oyster growers, meanwhile, are concentrating on simply regaining the public's faith.
I'd like to tell the public out there, the oyster-eating public, if they'd like to see the rock oyster industry in New South Wales flourish and survive this crisis, they should get out there and buy oysters.
Emma Siossian, NBN News.
And buy them.
All right, thank you.